Alright, hi everyone. We are on the final chapter, chapter 19, Farewell to Fablehaven. So in the last chapter, Kendra turned all the fairies into human-sized fairies, commanded them to go save everybody, and that's exactly what they did. So they saved everybody and then re-imprisoned Bahamut and Muriel and made it into a nice little hill. So they have done that, and then Kendra collapsed after all the fairies kissed her and turned back to their original form. So let's see what happens with that. So, chapter 19, Farewell to Fablehaven. Let's start off correctly. Kendra and Grandpa reclined in the wagon while Hugo pulled them down the road at a leisurely pace. The morning was clear and bright, with a few thin, high clouds barely clinging to existence, accidental brush strokes on a blue canvas. The day would be hot, but for now it was pleasant. A couple of fairies drifted alongside the wagon, waved at Kendra. She waved back, and they sped away, weaving around one another. The garden now teemed with fairies, and they paid Kendra a lot of special attention. They seemed pleased whenever she acknowledged them. "We haven't really gotten to talk since it all happened," Kendra said. "You were sleeping half the time," Grandpa replied. It was true. She had slept for 2 days and 2 nights straight after the ordeal, a personal best. "All those kisses knocked me out," she said. "Are you excited to see your parents?" asked Grandpa. Yes and no. It was the 3rd day since Kendra had awakened. Her parents were coming to pick them up this afternoon. Going home will seem bland after this. Well, you'll have fewer demons to worry about. Kendra smiled. True. Grandpa folded his arms. What you did was so special, I don't know how to speak about it. It barely seems real. Oh, it was real. You mended an irreparable situation and saved all of our lives in the process. The fairies have not gone to war for centuries. In that state, their power is virtually unrivaled. Bahamut did not stand a chance. What you did was so brave and so doomed to failure. I can't think of anyone I know who would have even tried it. It felt like it was my only hope. Why do you think the Fairy Queen helped me? Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe to save the preserve. Maybe she sensed the sincerity of your intentions. Your youth must have helped. I'm sure fairies would much rather follow a little girl into battle than some pompous general. But the truth is, I would never have guessed it would have worked. It was a miracle. Hugo stopped the cart. Grandpa climbed down and then helped Kendra. She held the silver bowl that she had taken from the island. They started down the faint path toward the archway in a tall, unkept hedge. Weird how I didn't have to drink the milk. Well, hang on. Weird how I don't have to drink the milk anymore, Kendra said. On the morning she awoke after her fairy kisses, she went down to the window and saw fairies fluttering about. It had taken a moment to register that she had not yet consumed any milk that day. I'll admit that worries me somewhat, Grandpa said. Creatures of whimsy are not solely confined to the preserves. The blindness of mortals can be a blessing. Take care where you look. I'd rather see things how they are, Kendra declared. They passed under the archway. A group of satyrs was playing tag with several slender maidens wearing flowers in their hair. The paddle boat was adrift in the middle of the pond. Fairies skimmed the surface of the water and soared among the gazebo. I'll be curious to know what other changes the fairies wrought in you, Grandpa said. I've never heard of such a thing. You'll let me know if you discover any other oddities? Like if I could turn Seth into a walrus? I'm glad you can joke about it, but I'm serious. They walked up the steps to the nearest pavilion. Just toss it in? Kendra asked. I think it would be best, Grandpa said. If the bowl came from the island, you should give it back. Kendra threw the bowl in like a frisbee. It landed in the water, and almost immediately a hand shot up and snatched it. So that's what I skipped, right? There's the hand shooting up and catching it. So this is the hand of a naiad, which is what Lena was. Remember, she became mortal from a naiad. But these naiads live basically they're immortal. They can live forever if they really wanted to. And their main goal in life is just to find pleasure in drowning people that get too close to their waters. So yeah, that's why they threw it and not handed it to them. That was quick, said Kendra. It'll probably end up down with Mendigo. The naiads respect the Fairy Queen. They'll make sure the bowl ends up where it belongs. Kendra looked at the pier. She may not know you, Grandpa said. I just want to say goodbye, whether she gets it or not. They walked along the boardwalk until they reached the gazebo adjoining the pier. Kendra walked out to the end of the pier. Grandpa stayed a few steps behind her. Remember, not too close to the water. I know, Kendra said. She leaned forward to look down into the pond. It was much clearer than it had been at night. She jumped a little when she realized that the face looking up at her was not her reflection. The naiad looked like a girl of about 16. with full lips and a profusion of golden hair swirling about a face shaped like a valentine. "I want to talk to Lena," Kendra said loudly, overpronouncing the words. "She may not come," Grandpa said. The Naiad kept staring at her. "Get Lena, please," Kendra repeated. The Naiad swam away. "She'll come," Kendra asserted. They waited. Nobody came. Kendra studied the water. She turned her hands into a megaphone around her mouth. "Lena, this is Kendra. I want to speak with you." Several minutes passed. Grandpa waited with her patiently, and then a face rose almost to the surface of the water, right at the end of the dock. It was Lena. Her hair was still white with a few black strands. Though she looked no younger, her face had the same ageless quality. "Lena, hi, it's Kendra, remember?" Lena smiled. Her face was barely an inch from the surface. "I just wanted to say goodbye. I really enjoyed our talks. I hope you don't mind being a Naiad again. Are you mad at me?" Lena motioned for Kendra to come closer. She put her hand by her mouth like she wanted to share a secret. Her almond eyes looked almost mirthful and excited. They did not match the white hair. Kendra bent down a little bit. "What?" Kendra said. Lena rolled her eyes and motioned for her to come closer. Kendra crouched a little more, and in the same instant that Lena reached up for her, Grandpa Sorensen pulled her back. "I told you," Grandpa said. "She's no longer the woman she was back at the house." Kendra leaned forward just enough to peer over the edge again. Lena stuck her tongue out and swam away. "At least she isn't suffering," Kendra said. Grandpa walked her back to the gazebo in silence. "She told me she would never choose to return to life as a Naiad," Kendra said after a while. "She said it more than once." "I'm sure she meant it," said Grandpa. "From where I stood, it did not look like she went willingly." "I noticed the same thing. I worried that she might be suffering. I thought that she maybe needed us to save her." "Are you satisfied?" Grandpa asked. "I'm not sure she even remembered me," Kendra admitted. "At first I thought she did, but I bet she was faking, trying to get me to come close enough to drown me." "Probably. She doesn't miss being human?" "Not from her current point of view," Grandpa agreed. Much like how being a Naiad did not sound very fulfilling to her from her mortal perspective. Why would the fairies do that to her? I don't think they saw it as a punishment. Lena was probably a victim of good intentions. But Lena was arguing with them. She didn't want to go. Grandpa shrugged. The fairies might not have known that once they restored her, she would change her mind. Looks like they were right. Remember, the fairies experience existence like the Naiads. From their point of view, Lena was out of her mind wanting to be immortal. They probably thought that they were curing her insanity. "I'm glad they restored everybody else," Kendra said. "They just restored Lena too much." "Are you sure? She was a Naiad to begin with." "Well, she didn't like the idea of aging. At least she won't die now, or get any older." "No, she won't. I still think she would rather be human." Grandpa frowned. "You may be right. Truth be told, if I knew a way to reclaim Lena, I would. I believe once she was mortal again, she would be grateful, but a Naiad can only descend to mortality voluntarily. In her current state, I doubt she would make that choice. I'm sure she is very disoriented. Perhaps in time she will gain some perspective." "What's it like for her?" "There's no way to be sure. For all I know, this is a unique occurrence. Her memories of mortality are apparently distorted, if she retains them at all." Kendra unconsciously twisted the sleeve of her shirt, a pained expression on her face. "So we just leave her there?" "For now. I will do some research and give the matter considerable thought. Don't tear yourself up about it. Lena would not want that. The alternative was being devoured by a demon, and she looked all right to me." They started back toward the wagon. "What about the Society of the Evening Star?" asked Kendra. "Are they still a threat? Muriel said that she was in contact with them." Grandpa pinched his bottom lip. "The Society will be a threat as long as it endures. It is difficult for an uninvited guest to gain access to a preserve, mortal or not. Some would say impossible, but the Society has shown repeated resourcefulness at circumventing so-called impossible obstacles. Fortunately, we foiled their attempt to use Muriel to free Bahamut and overthrow the preserve, but we now know that they learned the whereabouts of Fablehaven, and we will have to be more vigilant than ever." "What secret artifact is hidden here?" "It is unfortunate that your grandmother had to share that secret with you. I realize it was a precaution in case both of us were incapacitated, but the knowledge is a terrible burden to place on children. You must never speak of it. I've tried to impress that idea on Seth as well. Heaven help us all. I am the caretaker of Fablehaven, and I know little about the artifact, save that it is hidden somewhere on this preserve. If members of the Society of the Evening Star are aware of the artifact that is here, and we have every reason to believe that they are aware, they will not stop They will stop at nothing to penetrate our defenses and lay their hands on it. What will you do? Kendra said. What we always do, Grandpa said. Consult with our allies and take every measure to ensure that our defenses remain intact. The Society has known the location of dozens of preserves for centuries and yet has failed to infiltrate them. They may pay us extra attention, but unless we let our guard down, there is little they can do. What about that ghost lady, the one who escaped while the fairies were trapping Bahamut? I do not know her story except that she was obviously colluding with our enemies. I have never met many of the dark beings who lurk in the inhospitable corners of Fablehaven. They reached the wagon. Grandpa boosted Kendra up and they then climbed in himself. Hugo, take us home. They rode in silence. Kendra considered all that they had discussed: the fate of Lena, the impending threat of the Society of the Evening Star, the fateful night that had seemed like the end of her problems was starting to look like the beginning. Up ahead, off to the side of the road, Dale was chopping a fallen tree into firewood. Drenched in sweat, he swung the axe aggressively. As the wagon rolled by, he glanced up at Kendra. She smiled and waved. Dale gave a tight smile and looked away, returning to his chore. Kendra frowned. What's up with Dale lately? Do you think being turned into lead traumatized him? I doubt he felt a thing. He's beating himself up over something else. What? Don't say a word to this about him. Grandpa paused, glancing back toward Dale, and then went on speaking. He feels bad that his brother Warren wasn't present when the fairies were curing everybody. Grandma said that Dale's brother is catatonic. I still haven't met him. Could the fairies have helped? Grandpa shrugs. Considering that they put Lena back in the water, changed imps back into fairies, and remade Hugo out of a pile of rubble, yes, I imagine they could have cured Warren. Theoretically, any magic that can be done can also be undone. Grandpa scratched his cheek. You have to understand, last week I would have said there's no possible way of curing Warren. Believe me, I've investigated the subject thoroughly. But I've never heard of an imp changing back into a fairy either. It simply doesn't happen. I wish I'd thought of it, Kendra said. Warren didn't even cross my mind. It's not your fault in the slightest. Warren just wasn't in the right place at the right time. I'm grateful the rest of us were. How did Warren get like that? That, my dear, is part of the problem. We have no idea. He disappeared for 3 days, and on the 4th day he returned, white as a sheet. He sat down in the garden and hasn't said a word or responded to anyone since. He can chew food and walk if you lead him. He can even do some simple chores if you get him started. But no communication. His mind has flown. Hugo stopped at the edge of the yard. Grandpa and Kendra climbed down. Hugo, see to your chores. The golem hauled the cart away. I'm going to miss this place, Kendra said, taking in the bright flowers attended by glittering fairies. Your grandmother and I have waited a long time to find somebody like you among our posterity. Said Grandpa. Trust me, you'll be back. Kendra, Grandma called up the stairs. Your folks are here. I'll be right down. Kendra sat alone in her bed in the playroom. Seth was already downstairs. She had packed her bags and helped him with his. Kendra sighed. When her parents had first dropped her off, she had counted the days until their return. Now she was almost reluctant to see them. Since they knew nothing about the magical nature of the preserve, there was no way they could possibly relate to what she had experienced. The only person she could share it with was Seth. Anyone else would think she was insane. Just thinking about it made her feel isolated. Kendra crossed the room to the painting that she had done of the pond. It was the perfect keepsake from her stay, a paint by numbers drawn by a naiad, depicting the location of the bravest act of her life. Yet she hesitated to bring it. Would the image stir too many painful memories? Many of her experiences here had been dreadful. She and her family had nearly been killed, and she had now lost a friend, and she had lost a new friend when Lena was returned to the pond. At the same time, the painting might make her long for the enchanted world of the preserve. So many aspects of Fablehaven were wonderful. Life would seem so dry after the extraordinary events of the past couple of weeks. Either way, the painting might cause her pain, but of course those memories would persist with or without the picture of the pond, so she picked it up. The rest of her bags were already downstairs. She cast a final glance around the playroom, treasuring up the details, and walked out the door. She went down the stairs, along the hall, and started down the staircase toward the entry hall. Her mom and dad stood in the entry hall, smiling up at her. They had notably gained weight, especially Dad. He looked 20 pounds heavier. Seth stood near Dad, clutching his painting of the dragon. You did a painting too, Mom exclaimed. Kendra, it's gorgeous. I had help, she said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. How was the cruise? We made lots of memories, Mom said. Looks like Dad ate plenty of snails, Seth said. Dad rubbed his belly. Nobody warned me about all the desserts. You ready, honey? Mom said, putting an arm around Kendra. Aren't you going to look around? Kendra asked. We walked the grounds a bit while you were upstairs and toured the lower rooms. Was there something in particular you wanted to show us? Not really. We should probably get going, Dad said, opening the front door. Not too many days ago, that door had been mangled and an arrow was protruding from the frame. Outside, Dale was loading the last of the bags into the SUV. Grandma and Grandpa waited nearby in the driveway. Dad helped Kendra and Seth load their paintings, while Mom thanked Grandpa and Grandma Sorensen profusely. It was our pleasure, Grandma said earnestly. You'll have to let them visit sometime soon again. Grandpa insisted. I'd like that, Kendra said. Me too, Seth agreed. Kendra and Seth hugged their grandparents goodbye and then climbed into the SUV. Grandpa winked at Kendra. Dad started the engine. You kids have a good time? Yeah, Seth said. Amazing, Kendra added. Remember how worried you were when we dropped you off? Mom said as she buckled in her seatbelt. I bet it wasn't half as scary as you imagined. Kendra and Seth shared a very special look. All right, that is the end of the book. So, that's just some acknowledgments, some reading questions, so nothing left there. Let's look at a few questions from this, just to kind of wrap it all up. So, Fablehaven, Chapter 19 questions, last one. What permanent change did Kendra experience that worried Grandpa? Number 2, what did Kendra do with the silver bowl that she got from the Fairy Queen's Island? Number 3, why did the fairies restore Lena to a naiad? Number 4, what happened to Warren to make him lose his mind? Number 5, what keepsake did Kendra bring from the Fablehaven? Number 6, what did Lena try to do to Kendra when Kendra was returning the bowl? Why would she do that? Number 7, how did Seth change throughout his journey, or throughout his stay at Fablehaven? Number 8, how did Kendra change throughout her stay at Fablehaven? And number 9, write one paragraph describing why you did or did not like this book. So that's all for Chapter 19. Let me real quick grab the second book. So, the second book, the first one, Fablehaven number 1, green, book 1. This is book number 2 by Brandon Mull. It's called The Rise of the Evening Star, which is the bad guys in these stories. The Evening Star, right? It's the really bad society. So, the next book is super good. You get to kind of see, they go back to Fablehaven, you meet some new characters, there's some betrayal. I really do highly recommend that if you can, you pick up this book and you keep going with this series if you enjoyed listening to these. If you ever want to stop by my classroom, I have these books. You're more than welcome to take the first one, reread it, or grab the second one from me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and have a good summer. Bye.